First of all, thank you all who are here for coming. My name is Alec Walker-Serrano. I'm an organizer with NEPA Stands Up. I chair their LGBTQ committee. But today we're here for a vigil for victims of police violence. And we wanted to call particular attention to 3 recent cases of Sonya Massey, Terrell Miller, and Nyah Mway, 2 of whom were children. We're joined in this event by NEPA DSA and Direct Action United. So I want to thank everyone who's here and the orgs that helped put this really important event together. Police have killed 772 people so far this year as of today. People of color, immigrants, and people living with mental health issues are particularly at risk. Police killed more people in 2023 than in any year ever recorded. And police killings in 2024 are on pace to beat that record yet again. As police violence and repression continues to rise, it's more important than ever for us to speak the names and stories of those who have been killed. Their deaths didn't occur in a vacuum. They are the result of a system that was created to uphold white supremacy and the rights of property over the safety and well-being of the people. We affirm the rights of all working class and marginalized populations to be safe in their homes and communities, and call for community-based solutions, including mutual aid networks, community defense trainings, and mass mobilization against militarized arms of the state that are built to protect the ruling class rather than the people. Now, before I hand the mic over to Laura from NEPA DSA, I want to read a statement from my comrade, Jinx, a proud Black trans femme woman who is an incredible author, speaker, activist, and friend, and who wasn't able to make it tonight, but whose words are too important for us to not hear. Hi there. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to give a speech for Sonya Massey. I want to thank you all who came to back-to-back vigils. I don't blame anyone who didn't go to another one who didn't have the emotional capacity. Last week, I gave a speech to little Polly Likens. I briefly mentioned Sonya as well, that both of my identities are being attacked, that I have to count my blessings, and I demanded to know why I have to count my blessings. Hi, if you don't know who I am, my name is Jinx. I use she, her, they, them pronouns. Picture a beautiful, black, bald, clockable trans woman that gives Aphrodite a run for her money. I wrote a book, jumped out of a plane naked, and landed into a nudist resort where I work at. I also work with NEPA Stands Up. People assumed that I have it all under control, but no, I'm neurodivergent. I have bad depression, suicidal ideology, severe anxiety, and I also have dissociative identity disorder. April, an alter who has been with me since I was 10 years old, who raised me better than my own mother, told me that I must get my temper in check or I will be dead before I turn 18. That being Black is a struggle, that we can't show our struggles or our vulnerability. It isn't fair, but life isn't fair for people like me. I have seen white people have meltdowns, destroy things, and hurt people. I can only imagine if I show such a vulnerability. A cop would shoot me dead where I stood. When I was arrested, just blocks from here, the cop said I should count my blessings, that it was them and not someone else. Count my blessings for what? That he didn't have a bad day? What if I was having a bad day? Would I be dead where I stood? I stared down a cop's barrel once. I've seen the hatred in their eyes. They aren't here to protect us, so we protect ourselves. If you see someone having a bad day, reach out. If you're having a bad day, reach out. Community is what keeps us alive. Bonds keep us safe, not the system, not the cops. You're allowed to have a bad day. You're not a bad person for having a bad day. You shouldn't have to be perfect and put together to be safe. So now I'd like to introduce Laura from NEPA DSA, who is the membership mobilizer, to talk a little bit about bloated police budgets. Laura.
Thank you, Alec. That was a great presentation. This is my first one, so be kind. In 2020, with the Black Lives Matter movement and the defund the police rhetoric going around, I was part of an organization who researched police budgets for most of Luzerne County and for Lackawanna County. And what I found was incredible. We were able to obtain the information regarding the police budgets through right-to-know requests. Anyone can file a right-to-know request. It's free. And the person or the entity that you're filing the right-to-know request for is obligated to respond. They can't just blow you off. We found that in Pennsylvania, there is a ruling allowing police budgets to be cut in half in favor of allocating funding back into the community. And through the budgets and through the research, we found out that among the 19 local municipalities that I researched, there was $13.5 million available to reinvest back into communities of NEPA. Overestimation of law enforcement resources undercuts other needs in the community. Mental health, homelessness, education, and smart decarceration, just to name a few. For instance, I'll start with Lackawanna County. From 1980 to 2020, police budgets have doubled in the NEPA region. The borough of Waymart, they purchased 5 assault rifles in 1 year in 2012. Old Forge spends half of their town budget on the police. Wilkes-Barre City, their city budget is $12.3 million, and they only allocate $400K to social welfare programs. What does all that mean? It means police spending is way out of control. Nobody is overseeing it. They don't have to report this to anybody. A right-to-know request is the only way to obtain this information. Now, there is something we can do as citizens, I found out, and that is police departments, individual police departments, can go through an accreditation process, meaning that they are independently reviewed and they have to adhere to better community policing standards and better oversight. One of the things they spend the least amount of money on, as evidenced by recent events, is training. They don't go to the trainings they're supposed to go to. They spend something like $1,000 to $4,000 on training. And the money goes to weapons, the money goes to new vehicles, salary packages, $80,000 and up. I mean, that is just pensions, and it's way out of control. The accreditation process is voluntary. So I'm not saying it could be easy to get them to go through the accreditation process. Throop is accredited here. Scranton is in the process of it. It takes about 2 years. The University of Scranton is accredited. A couple of towns down in Luzerne County, Kingston and 44th, they're accredited. Hanover, Dallas, they're accredited. But they have to voluntarily do this. So citizens have to push for this because it's more oversight, it's safer community policing practices and standards, and it can help with decarceration overall. Less aggressive, and it can make everyone safer. So that's definitely something we can think about working on in the future, going to city council meetings and advocating for this, pushing for this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Our next speaker that I'd like to invite up is Kalib Deshaw. Kalib has been organizing mostly as a safety marshal, both in southern interior New York and in northeastern PA, including with NEPA Stands Up. And he's going to talk a little bit about what happened to 4-year-old Terrell Miller and police incompetence and what we can do instead to keep ourselves safe rather than relying on the police. Kalib.
Terrell Miller was just 4 years old when he was shot and killed by Macomb, Illinois Police Lieutenant Nick Gock. On the night of March 16, 2024, Lieutenant Nick Gock and Officer Corey Cameron responded to a 911 call made by neighbors of Nyah Miller, Terrell's mother. After they arrived, they forcibly entered the apartment after hearing Kiana scream, "Help, he's stabbing me." When the officers entered, Kiana was visibly injured, covered in blood, crying and telling officers that her son is in there. Lieutenant Gock ordered the attacker, 57-year-old Anthony George, to let him see his hands. Lieutenant Gock then demanded Kiana to get out. As she exited, she once again reminded the officer that her son was still in the apartment. This is when George began to move towards Terrell. You can hear him screaming, terrified. Lieutenant Gock allowed George, armed with 2 knives, to enter the room that Terrell was in. Lieutenant Gock began walking down the hallway towards the room. As Lieutenant Gock approached the end of the hallway, George appeared with Terrell in his arms, with a knife to his throat and to his stomach. Immediately, without a second thought, Lieutenant Gock fired a single round. The bullet struck Terrell in the top of his head and exited through George's neck, killing them both. This is not an irregular tragedy. We're here today to honor the lives of 3 people who were killed by the police, 2 of whom were children. From January of 2015 to April of 2021, U.S. police killed over 100 children. 23 of them were under the age of 15. 62% of these children were Black or Hispanic. We see this every day. It's becoming more and more common. Law enforcement using unjust and unethical methods and procedures to violate the rights, safety, and dignity of those living within the United States. After all of the mass mobilization that occurred in 2020 over the murder of George Floyd and the anti-police brutality sentiment, still nothing has changed fundamentally. On the contrary, the amount of people killed by police has increased every single year since 2020. During this period, crime rates have reduced significantly. The 13% decline in murder from 2022 to 2023 was the largest one-year decline ever recorded in the U.S., according to the FBI. Another record was set that year for the most people killed by U.S. police ever recorded. The lack of crisis and de-escalation training given to police and law enforcement in this country isn't due to ignorance or incompetence, but because those tactics do not align with the purpose or values held by law enforcement agencies. Their duty is not to protect and serve their communities, but to uphold capitalism and its interests, in contradiction with the well-being of the people. This is made clear by the public duty doctrine. U.S. courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have ruled that, and I quote, "Government officials, including police officers, absent a special relationship, do not owe a specific duty of care to individual members of the public. The police have no duty to protect you from harm. If the police aren't going to protect you, and when you call them for help, they might just kill you, who will protect you? I will. If it isn't the duty of law enforcement to protect the rights and safety and security of our communities, then it is all of our duty. There is no need for police when your neighbors, friends, co-workers, acquaintances, and even strangers are informed, trained, and ready to act when you are in need of assistance. We need to replace law enforcement with mediators, outreach workers, crisis counselors, mental health and substance abuse clinicians. Crime is a real issue, but not as much of a crisis that law enforcement and politicians from both sides of the authoritarian duopoly make it out to be. Crime has continuously and significantly declined over the past 30 years. But do you know what hasn't? Rates of substance abuse disorders, homelessness, poverty, and mental illness. These are the true ailments of our society, perpetuated by capitalism and most subjected to harassment and violence by the hands of law enforcement. It's time to reject the state's monopoly of violence and replace the presence of militarized law enforcement in our communities with legal advocates, social workers, and well-trained, well-intentioned community defense forces. Run for the people, by the people. No disconnect, just empathy, love, and compassion. Terrell Miller would have been 5 years old 2 weeks ago. Terrell's mother described him as a ball of sunshine. What life would Terrell have lived if it wasn't ended so soon? He could have been anything, and due to the incompetence and lack of care from Lieutenant Nick Gock, we will never know. No parent should ever have to bury their child. I personally don't have any children, but I do have nieces and nephews, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself if anything ever happened to them. In an interview with local news media, Terrell's mother said, "A lot of people want to make it a racial thing, but it's really not. He, Terrell, could have been anybody's son, but he's America's nephew. That's what I'm starting to say." She is absolutely right. This could have been anybody's child, regardless of demographics. It could have been one of my nieces or nephews. The issue is a police issue. It's an issue of capitalism, an issue of the state dismissing the rights and safety of the people. We must stand together, united, and demand an end to police violence. Rest in peace, Terrell.
Talk a little bit about specifically the issues facing immigrant communities. If you know me, and if you've heard me speak before, you're probably used to hearing me talk about queer liberation, about reproductive rights, or maybe even about prison abolition, but I've never had the chance to talk about my family of immigrants. For those who don't know, my grandparents immigrated to Southern California from their small village of Villa Victoria, Mexico, for a better life for their children. Bringing their oldest kids along, my father and his other siblings stayed behind until his parents had enough money and were ready to send back for them. He arrived in SoCal as a young boy, just about kindergarten age, and spoke no English. Although his story is one that I know is difficult for him to talk about, he let me know bits and pieces. How it felt to go to school where no one spoke your language, finding solidarity with the other kids of color in school because the school was predominantly white and ostracized them. The racial tensions that existed and still do exist between people of color and the police in Los Angeles. I love my father. I love knowing that his parents did everything that they could to provide a life free of poverty, and that he in turn did everything he could for me. I am proud of my father being an immigrant, but I am also fearful, and I have been since I was a kid, that he or any other number of folks on his side of the family would be discriminated against, harassed, or worse, harmed or killed by the police. When anti-immigrant sentiments get loud, I get tense. There should be no stigma for moving to the United States out of necessity, especially when so many of those coming here right now are seeking refuge from abject poverty and rates of violence that you and I can only begin to try to comprehend. Now that leads me to Nyah Mway. Nyah Mway, 13 years old when he was shot point blank while being held on the ground by police officers, was an immigrant, a refugee. His family was forced to flee Myanmar due to ethnic cleansing against the Karen people. Nyah Mway himself was born in a refugee camp in Thailand near the border of Myanmar. His father lost a leg to a landmine. After 10 years in the refugee camp, Nyah Mway's family relocated to Utica with hopes of a safer future and better opportunities for their children. Instead of that bright future for a 13-year-old boy described as fiercely loving and protective of his family, who wanted to become a doctor to treat his brother's leg injury that had eluded doctors, who told his parents he loved them every day when arriving home from school, has been stolen by an incompetent police officer, murdered by a tool of the state. For those who don't know much about the history of the refugee population in Utica, I'd like to read an excerpt from an excellently written article by Kelly Huey, who interviewed members of Nyah Mway's family and community. It reads as follows. A State Department program to resettle refugees revitalized Utica after its post-industrial decline. Now 1 in 5 residents of Utica is a refugee or the child of a refugee. Of the more than 60,000 living in Utica, around 8,000 are Karen refugees. They moved into homes covered in mint green and eggshell yellow lead paint, abandoned duplexes in cheery, dangerous disrepair. While the labor of refugees facilitated the reopening of factories in the former Rust Belt city, their communities remained ghettoized and under-resourced. Hawa Juma, a Somali refugee, questions if Utica really loves its refugees, as a 2005 United Nations publication once touted, or if the city just loves the labor they bring. We are nurses, we are doctors, we do so many different things that serve, that gives back in so many ways, she said. We should not be gunned down and killed in the same place we came for freedom and peace. She drew a connection between the violence and displacement her people faced in Myanmar and the violence of the American people. This context, Chloe explained, seems to be missing from the conversations around Mway's decision to flee from the police. Your parents always say, when you see the cops, run or hide. Where we grew up, you hide or you run when you see the cops, or you die, right? Or you get deported, or something really bad happens to you. Nyah Mway committed no crime. He was an innocent child and a threat to no one. A refugee whose family fled violence only for him to still become a victim of it at the hands of those who are supposedly supposed to protect us. We must demand better for our immigrant communities, for our communities of color, for our neighbors who don't speak English. We must stand in solidarity with marginalized immigrant communities that face the dual threat of violence from police and deportation from ICE. Because no person, no child, no refugee, no migrant deserves what happened to Nyah Mway. It is up to us to engage in mass mobilization to ensure that police violence is no longer a threat to our lives and the lives of our precious youth. I'd like to pass the mic now to our final speaker, Amber Viola, an activist, mother, and podcast host from NEPA. Amber.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me the honor of coming out here and sharing kind of my thoughts with you guys this evening. I want you to take a moment and remember when we were all kids, when we were innocent and we all thought the world was a safe place. Our parents knew everything. We believed all the adults in our lives had the best interest of us at heart. Adults were there to protect us and to guide us. The police were there to protect you and to protect your family. Most of us can also remember a time when our innocence was taken away. The day your belief system was shattered. The day that your trust was forever broken. There's another time that doesn't get spoken about often. The day that you were radicalized. This tends to happen more in communities of color, low-income communities, and underrepresented areas. But it happens. A time not just when your belief system was shattered, but a time when you decided to do something about it. What moment radicalized you? The moment radicalized me was Tamir Rice. In 2014, he was 12 years old and he was playing. Someone called the police and said that there was a kid playing with what looked like might be a toy gun in a park. I will never forget how I felt watching the video of that police car still rolling, and he got out the car and he started shooting before the wheels even stopped. Why would somebody call the police on a child playing in a park? Why would the police start shooting before the car stopped? Why didn't the dispatcher tell the police officer that it was probably a kid and also tell them that the gun was probably a toy gun? In that moment, I became radicalized. I knew in the depths of my soul that I had to do something to change the world that I was living in. For me, it wasn't just about officer-involved shootings. It's about all the other people that are wrong and don't say anything about anything. All the people that justify the actions of a bad person. I stopped believing that a video would help. Maybe call me a little jaded, but I feel cheated. I stopped believing that a video would bring some sort of justice to this situation. The system is not set up to protect people like Sonya Massey. She called the police asking for assistance. She said she was even scared of police. She asked to make sure that the police that came to her house were like good police officers who would remain calm in a situation because she knew that she had some mental health battles and she was worried about that from the beginning. Her family wasn't even told that it was an officer-involved shooting. They were told that she could have maybe taken her own life, or maybe the intruder could have taken her life. Now that the video has been released, how many people are still trying to justify the actions of the shooter? How many people are trying to justify the actions of the police department? How many people knew this man was trash? He was in 6 departments in 4 years. Why didn't anybody stand up? Why didn't anybody say, hey, maybe this man doesn't need to work for the public? When videos like this are released, a little part of me wishes and hopes that maybe this will be it. Maybe this video will help change the tide. Maybe this video will make people understand. Things like this don't just play out in the media, we see them play out in real life. I wish people understood how hard it is to live in a place where people hate you just because of the way you look. People make assumptions about you, that you're dangerous, that you're violent, that you're a criminal, that you're a thug. And all of these things are used to justify our deaths. The man who shot Sonya was afraid for his life. The amount of hurt that so many of us carry due to living in a place where no matter what you do, it will never be enough. There's been veterans and active duty military who have been shot by the police, and because those victims were black, it was justified. In these moments, these incidents are happening, we don't know anything about the person. You don't know their mental health, you don't know their criminal record, you don't know what was in their blood system. We learn all of those things after the fact, and all of those things are used to make black people look like a criminal. I believe that the people who are calling 911 on their fellow citizens for living while black need to be prosecuted. Qualified immunity, it needs to be taken away. Maybe if we didn't have things like that, these incidences would never have happened. The thugs that commit murder and then are fired or maybe resigned just go on and work for somebody else. This leaves the burden of being honest about their life and their criminal history up to that person. The person we already know is trash. Tamir Rice was seen as too big for his age, a criminal playing with a gun. Sonya Massey's mental health is now being used to justify her murder. A pot of boiling water is now used as a murder weapon. She was trying to kill him with the water. Massey being gunned down, I saw myself. I saw my family members. I saw my friends. I saw people who looked like me. It's not just about the justice system. It's about changing how people view black Americans. The killing of black trans women. They are being killed because they're not seen as human. The handling of COVID-19 in black communities. We weren't seen as human. The black maternal death rate is so high because, again, we are not seen as human. White people are often given the benefit of the doubt and black people are not because we are not seen as human. We are stopped more by the police. Due to being stopped more, we are often arrested more. Due to being arrested more, we are often charged more. Due to being charged more, we are often charged more harshly. We are often sentenced to prison more harshly and for longer sentence. All of these things lead to more black and brown people being in jail. And know what that feeds into? The belief system that black and brown people are more violent. They automatically assume that this person is just a criminal and they're up to no good. Why would your first assumption of a woman who called the police because she was scared be that she was trying to kill you? I know that social media is not real life. I know that it's not everything. But when we look at articles on our wonderful Scranton Times or WNEPA, and you see the comments about Sonya and how she was treated, and you see the vile hatred that people post, those people work for our local government. Those people work for the fire department, the police department. Those people work in the court offices. Those people are the people who feed into all of these things. I always wonder, what are we gonna do next? And I hope that this moment will radicalize you. I hope this moment will make you see that maybe you need to do something. Maybe you need to do something to change the world. During the Black Lives Matter movement, there were many people who felt uncomfortable or didn't like the term defend the police. We've heard people up here kind of give more explanation to the budgets and different things like that. The argument I heard was often, what if somebody broke into my house and I called the police and there was no police to come help me? Well, there were police to help Sonya. She called them and she was murdered. I want to ask you again, in this moment we're standing out here in the rain, Did this moment radicalize you? What will you do now to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What will you do now to make sure that you individually will change the world and make it a better place? Thank you.
And yeah, before we get to the candle lighting, just to piggyback off of that, we have resources on this resource table, and that includes actions that you can take right now. That includes resources that you can utilize right now instead of contacting the police if you're having a mental health crisis, if you're having a housing crisis. We need to keep ourselves safe. We protect us. And we want you to know the facts too. So there's a fact sheet there. There's a list of actions that you can take right now. And there's a list of resources if you need them. So I encourage y'all to grab some. And while you're grabbing a candle, because we're about to go into the candle lighting, and Tony's going to read our eulogies for us, our obituaries for us. But yeah, come to the resource table, grab some papers, grab a candle, we'll get to lighting, and make sure you stay under a tent so our flames don't go out.
The youngest that was taken away from us, Terrell Miller. Terrell Marshawn Miller was born July 18th, 2019, to Kiana Miller and Dwayne Crenshaw in Macomb, Illinois. Terrell gained his heavenly wings on March 16th, 2024. At only 4 years old, Terrell was a light in a lot of people's world. Everyone that he came in contact with, life was forever changed. He could hold a conversation like a 50-year-old, and his intelligence was unmatched. Terrell loved going to church to sing and praise the Lord. He loved Spider-Man and was truly a hero to so many people. Terrell was preceded in death by his grandfather Stanley Riley and his uncle Terrell Miller. He leaves cherished memories with his loving mother, Kiana Miller, father Dwayne, and bonus mom, Callie Allington. Siblings, Kingston, Ilana, and Christian. Grandparents, Benretta, Yaya Jones, Karen Miller, Stefana Riley, and Bruce Crenshaw, his best friends, Bryce Crenshaw, and a host of aunts, uncles, cousins, and relatives. Funeral services will be held 2 p.m. back in March 2024 at Mount Calvary Church in Macomb. And then it goes for visitations. We love you, Terrell. God bless you. Nyah Mway, age 13 of Utica, died on June 28th, 2024. He was born in the Umtium camp in Thailand on August 8th, 2010, to his mother, Che Wer, and father, K. Le Wan. Nyah was a student in the Utica school system and just completed the 8th grade. He was a member of the Buddha Dhamma Tukka Temple. Nyah was survived by his parents, Che War, Ka Le Wan, his brothers, Thong Wo and Won, his sisters, Pa War, and many other family members. He had his services back in Saturday, July 6th of this year. God bless you and peace be with you. Finally, back to Sonya Massey. Sonya Wilburn Massey was 36, departed this life on July 6, 2024, at St. John's Hospital. She was born February 12th, 1988, in San Diego, California, and daughter of Donna and James Wilburn. She was a member of the Second Timothy Baptist Church, was a very devoted mother. She loved to do hair and spent time with her family. Sonya retired from JJ Gaming in Springfield, Illinois. She was preceded in death by her grandparents, Raymond and Felix Wilburn. She leaves in to cherish memories of her son, Malika Hill Massey, of Springfield, Illinois, daughter Jeanette mother Donna, and her father James Wilburn, and her sister Ava. And several aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, cousins, and family. We'll miss you very much, Sonya. God bless.
Really need to keep creating these spaces where we feel safe to grieve, but also to talk about like all the other things that come along with that grief, that anger, the frustration, and use that and channel that because we feel that way because we're human and because we know this is wrong. So thank you to all who came to honor Terrell Miller, Sonya Massey, and Nyah Mway. Whenever you're ready, you can feel free to return the candles at the table. And thank you for coming. Just don't stop showing up. Keep showing up in your community. We protect each other. We need each other. Thank you.